And setting up my files for GLOWFORGE work, what I do is I open up a new Inkscape window and then I go to File, Document Properties. And what I like to do is to set it up so that it'll fit on my cut bed. And for this, I always work in inches, so I'm going to change the display units to inches, and then come down here to custom size, change that to inches as well. And I always do 19 by 10 and a half. And this way, anything that I put on that should fit inside that engraving area. And I won't have any issues. I can make sure that anything in this file will fit on one GLOWFORGE size board. So the cut area itself is actually 12 by 20, but if you have a GLOWFORGE, sometimes you know that if you don't line it up perfectly, it can be a little smaller than that, and like the actual engraving window is a little bit smaller. So then here we are with that window, and you can actually go to View Zoom, um, and you can select any of these. So you could pick, like if you had a drawing on the screen, it would zoom to the drawing. This is just going to zoom to that page, that artboard size. And then from here, we can go in and we can do that image trace. So I'm going to do File, Import. And this is a little different than File Open. All it does is this places your image directly in the file that you're currently in instead of opening up a new one. And we're going to just open this little sloth. And I just use the default settings. And so it's a little bit big, so I'm just going to come up here and make him 6 inches tall. And then you can see it's not on my board, so I'm just moving it. And then I'm going to press that 4 takes me to my selection. So that would be the same as if I did view selection. And so you can tell this is a PNG image just by the bounding box around it. So when you double click, all it does is just changes from your transform tools here, like the scaling and resizing, to your rotating. If it was a vector image, I could double click and it would go have nodes all around this outline. And so the difference between vector and pixel based, vector is scalable. So no matter what size you make it, it's going to have the same crisp lines. It's going to be able to be scaled really small, really large. And that's why we work with vectors for laser cutting, because no matter what size you make it, it's not distorted. Procreate is a pixel based program. And what that means is that if you zoom in, you see how this gets blurry? You can start to see the pixels. So when you resize it, it does get distorted and the quality can suffer, like as you transform and change the shape. And when you zoom in, you can see all these fuzzy edges. That is how you know it's pixel. So I'm going to show you the difference once we trace this. So the easiest way is to right click on your image and do Trace Bitmap. There's also a shortcut for this. It's Shift-Alt-B. And then it brings up this Trace Bitmap window. And so for my drawings, I always just export a black and white drawing. Well, for the most part, not always, but this is the easiest way to vector something, is if you have your shapes in black on a white canvas, then you can just use the default settings and you don't really need to mess with anything. So this is what it looks like, and you can hit this update button, and based on what you have selected, this is the preview that it gives for tracing your image. So if I decided I wanted to do where it wouldn't cut this out, so basically in Procreate, anything that you draw when you go to vector it, it's going to outline. So when you go to cut this on the laser, it's going to cut out this black piece as an outline, and then all the negative space is going to be shapes in itself, but there will be an outline. So the way in Inkscape to do a single line is to do this center line tracing. And I haven't quite figured this out yet, but it's supposed to do it where it just turns it into like a line in the middle of your drawing. So if I hit OK, this is the result I get. Oops, it's just going to take a minute. And it traces around, so I could score this design. And it's not perfect, it's a little bit wonky, and so I don't use that a lot, but if you're trying to take something, say you drew a flower and you wanted a really simple single outline that you could score, that's the way you could do that. And this isn't terrible, like this could be cute. I would just adjust the heart for the nose, but I'm going to delete that, and we're going to do it again the other way. We're going to use brightness cutoff, which is the default, and we're going to hit update. It's going to look like this. And when I hit OK, there is our vector trace. And so you can automatically tell the difference because when I zoom in, look at the difference in these edges. So this one is the pixels. It's really blurry already, and we're not even that far zoomed in. And this one, you could zoom in forever, and it would still have those crisp edges. And so when you double click on this, it shows those nodes like we talked about. But when you double click on this one, it doesn't. So once you have your vector trace, you really don't need your PNG anymore, and so you can delete that out. And then you can go in and you can honestly just mess with your design and use the shape builder tools to add any other elements you want, and then format it how we talked about in my other videos. But that's just a quick overview of the image trace and the difference between vector and pixel-based images. And so the GLOWFORGE reads vectors. So when you upload an SVG in the system, that's how it knows it can read that and cut based on your file. It will read pixel-based images, bitmaps, but it can only engrave them. So you have to convert your image to a vector if you want it to cut on the GLOWFORGE. And then I do have another video of how I would format this, so I'm not going to go into that here, but like I said, this is your vector image. You have all these nodes. You can adjust if you decided something was a little off and you wanted to fix it, you could go in and move these nodes around to reshape. Say I wanted a more dramatic little heart nose here, I could adjust it by pulling on the nodes, and then once you click out, it changes your image. But honestly, I think it's pretty cute. It's super straightforward. The image trace with black and white. You don't have to mess with colors, so you don't have to mess with like the stacking images or anything like that. It will just give you your black outline as a vector, and then you can go in and manipulate those shapes as needed.